All right, welcome back in CBS Sports Radio. It is Zach Gelb taking you up until 6 a.m. Eastern time. We're going to talk some hoops right now, and we're going to do it with someone that covers the NBA for NBA.com and NBA TV, and that's my good buddy Sekou Smith, who's kind enough to hop on board with us for a few minutes on this Friday. Sekou, appreciate the time. Thank you for it, and how are you?
I'm good, Zach, man. How are you?
Well, doing great. So let's start off with the biggest story in the sport, and that's Kyrie Irving. He's going to undergo another procedure, will be out for the playoffs, out for 4 to 5 months. I didn't know how it was going to happen, but I didn't believe that Kyrie was going to play in the postseason this year. Was this a big surprise to you that now it's official, or did this catch you a little bit that, hey, you expected he wasn't going to be able to play for the postseason?
I wasn't expecting him, to be honest with you, Zach. I felt like when the initial diagnosis came out and I heard about the first procedure, I said, man, that sounds ominous, and I'm pretty sure the medical staff in Boston had an understanding that this might be possible. And, and once it becomes a reality, I think it sinks in for the rest of the Celtics and their fans that, a season that has been an absolute roller coaster from 5 minutes and 15 seconds in when Gordon Hayward goes down is continuing on that path. The one saving grace they have, of course, is that Brad Stevens is as good as they get in the coaching business, and he's going to have that team ready to play, and they're going to compete like crazy. But you know as well as I do, there comes a point in the playoffs that talent and available talent wins the day. And I certainly expect that to be the case for the Celtics at some point.
But when I look at it, we knew Gordon Hayward was going to be out, but you take a look at Kyrie, he wasn't going to be 100% if he was able to return for the postseason. That's not a team that was going to be able to win the title this year with all the injuries that they have suffered. But when you look at it from a big picture perspective, Kyrie, this is another procedure. He's going to be out 4 to 5 months. How does this affect the rest of his career moving forward?
Well, I think, if you're Boston, you're using this time to make sure you secure that future by not pushing it at all. For a guy who's had injury issues dating all the way back to his time at Duke, Kyrie's still a young guy, even with the issues he's had, and that knee has become something that you look at and say he's had enough damage to it that you have to really plan going, moving forward to take care of that as a precautionary thing for the rest of his career. It's probably going to be an issue in some form or fashion, given the injuries and procedures he's had to correct it. So everything you do, if you're the Celtics, is plotted around making sure that you take every necessary precaution to keep Kyrie as healthy as possible, because he's going to have knee problems for the remainder of his career.
We all know this is a detrimental loss for the Celtics in this year's version of the team. If you look at some potential first-round opponents, as they're most likely going to be the two, you have the Heat, the Bucks, the Wizards, all fighting to see who will go on to play the Celtics as the 7. Without Kyrie Irving, can the Celtics in a 7-game series, can they advance to the second round if they have to go up against either the Heat, the Bucks, or the Wizards, or is that not possible?
No, I think they can, because they're going to scrap like crazy, and Brad Stevens is going to pull every move out of his coaching bag to get him there. I just feel like projecting anything beyond that is really unrealistic for a team that's going to be down 2 of its key pieces that it was expecting to have this season. Marcus Smart, is not necessarily going to be available when they need him. It's just too many things that have been snatched away from them to project them making a deep playoff run. But on adrenaline and guts and everything we've seen from them this season alone, I would suspect they would have what it takes to get through one round. And it doesn't matter who they play. They were going to have issues, regardless. Miami has an inside presence that will be difficult to deal with. You know how difficult Milwaukee's going to be for anybody in a playoff, situation where you got to deal with Giannis night after night after night, and the rest of the length and athleticism on that team. But Boston's nasty enough to get through one round. I just don't know that they'll have enough to get beyond that.
Sekou Smith is my guest right now. Zach Gelb in for Amy Lawrence on CBS Sports Radio. Let's get to the Cavs. Big win last night. Come from behind. You defeat the Wizards. Now you got the Sixers later on today, which is a big game for the seeding in the 3 seed. Cavs get back Ty Lue. They get the win up against the Wizards. We're all just waiting for the postseason to start for Cleveland. That's really when their season does commence. How do you view the Cavs as we get ready, which has been an up and down year as they get ready for another postseason run?
Well, as much as everybody has tried to write them off at times throughout this season, and they have had an inordinate amount of drama. Even for a LeBron James team, they've had a bunch this year with, the roster getting flipped over. The Isaiah Thomas, situation seems like a lifetime ago. And it's just months removed, for all those guys. Until LeBron shows me some signs that he's slowing down, and I've seen nothing yet, Zach, 15 years in, at 33 years old, to see, or that even suggests he's slowing down. I'm betting on LeBron. I'm betting on him dragging his team through the Eastern Conference. They're going to be an extremely difficult out, even though we both know they're not playing at the level they have the previous 3 seasons. They don't have that same chemistry or makeup as a group. But LeBron is so good and impacts the game in so many different ways. I don't know. We haven't been able to see anybody in the East do it for the last 7 years. I can't imagine there's a team out there now any better suited to knocking them off than there has been in these past 7 years.
And they're vulnerable, but I'm with you too. I think that LeBron's going to be going back to the final just because I don't see how someone contains him enough in a 7-game series, and they do it 4 times to result in 4 victories. But let's touch to our audience that is listening in Toronto. They continuously call me and they say the Raptors, this is their year. They're going to be going to the final. What would you say to the Toronto fan?
I would tell the Toronto fans that it's good to be positive about that, but they have demons against the Cavaliers in particular, and some playoff demons that they have to exercise before I'm ready to jump on that bandwagon. And they got to show me, really, Zach, they got to show me by just winning the first game of their first round series. Like, start a series off on the right note and let me know that what we've seen out of Dwayne Casey's team all season, particularly early in the year, is not a fluke. It's not something that vanishes in the face of a team like Cleveland, where you have a LeBron James, you have an individual force that's greater than what the sum of Toronto's parts can withstand. I just don't know. And I love the idea of the deep rotation, kind of bucking convention and playing a deeper rotation into the postseason the way Dwayne Casey says he wants to. But, man, they just, every time I want to believe in the Raptors, they run up against Cleveland or Boston or a team that I say to myself, they should be able to get over this hump now, and they just can't do it. Kyle Lowry, DeMar DeRozan, and the supporting cast of that, they got to show me that they're ready for all of the stuff they're talking about.
Sekou Smith joins us right now on CBS Sports Radio. In the remaining games of the regular season, and it comes to the Eastern Conference, I'm more focused on who's going to get that 3 seed. Will it be the Cavs or the Sixers? They play each other coming up later tonight at the Wells Fargo Center in South Philadelphia. That 3 spot, Sekou, is very big because you get the winner of the Celtics or the 7 seed, and it sets up a very nice road to get to the Eastern Conference Final.
It does. It's huge, and I think it means much more to Philadelphia.
No question.
Because they're going to have to clear some hurdles as a group with all those young guys who are going to be making their first, real significant playoff, appearances. You want every advantage possible if you're Brett Brown. And I know people say, hey, a hard road sometimes builds character and all this other stuff. But I think in Philadelphia's case, you want the smoothest road possible to the deep end of the pool in the playoffs. And that's it with that 3 seed. Something that, I'll be honest with you, I had no idea that they would be competing for a 3rd seed and a chance to win 50 games. I thought they would have to scrap and claw their way just to be in the mix for the 8th spot by the end of the season. So they've far exceeded any expectation I had for them as a group. I think Joel Embiid potentially becomes the true game changer for them. I don't know that there's another team other than maybe Miami that will even, have a human being capable of trying to match Embiid in a playoff series, and Hassan Whiteside. So I just think Philadelphia has such a perfect setup with Kyrie going down, Boston maybe not being as strong as they would normally be. They need that 3 seed to help facilitate what could be a monster playoff run for them.
And they could definitely be dangerous. You're exactly right, because we look at pressure in the postseason. It all depends on, how effective Embiid is when he comes back and when that is when he actually comes back. But they're playing with house money. No one thought they would be a 3 seed this year, just like you were saying.
No, absolutely. It's the best possible thing that could have happened. With Markelle Fultz coming back and actually getting a little bit of this experience as well. Philly is set up as one of those teams that you look at and say, kind of like we looked at Oklahoma City years ago when Kevin Durant, Russell Westbrook, and James Harden were together and just getting started. If they continue on this trajectory, they got a chance to be a factor for the next decade. They got a chance to be a team in the East that you say, man, if they stay healthy and these guys keep improving, they add pieces year by year, they're going to be, in everybody's way in the Eastern Conference for the foreseeable future. It starts, though, with a really good playoff showing this time around.
I've been talking about this since last summer, and we know it's just going to escalate more and more and more in this summer, and that's LeBron James maybe possibly going to Philadelphia. If you had to put a percentage on that in this offseason, where would you put that number at?
I've been wrestling with that back and forth, trying to figure out what makes sense for LeBron at this stage of his career. Because he's such a calculated guy, and I mean that with all due respect. He doesn't do anything on a whim. So I know he's examined his options, no matter how many times they try and say that it's not on his mind and he's totally focused on the season. We know better than that. LeBron has to know that the Eastern Conference provides him the easier landscape to the championship round. And there are going to be any number of options he'll have. Philadelphia being one that sticks out as maybe something that's emerged since this season began. But I would say a 50-50 chance that he gets out of Cleveland and goes elsewhere. And that's being conservative. In my heart of hearts, I'm wondering what else can he do in Cleveland, for the next few years. And for a guy who loves challenges and loves the opportunity to shut up his critics and prove people wrong, maybe LeBron thinks, you know what, I've done everything I can in the East. Maybe it is time for me to go to the Western Conference and try myself in that scenario in a totally different pressure cooker and see if I can come through.
And another huge storyline this upcoming summer is going to be Kawhi Leonard, and if the Spurs are going to move him. I don't expect him to play in the postseason. I think that would be a big surprise at this point. Is there any way to salvage that relationship, Sekou?
Yes, I think if you are R.C. Buford and Greg Popovich, who have shown themselves to be, masters in managing a roster and keeping the pieces in place, to build a dynasty, if you will, relatively speaking, you give them the benefit of the doubt going into whatever negotiations they have to soothe that relationship with Kawhi. Now, if there's somebody in Kawhi's camp who's made up their mind, they want him somewhere other than San Antonio, and there's not a bit of, of conversation or, manipulation or convincing that's going to change that, then, you have to resign yourself to the fact that he's out of there, and you got to make the best of that situation if you're the Spurs. But I think you exhaust all options before you get to that point if you're San Antonio. You do not give up a guy with his resume, with his, youth and ceiling, no matter what injury issue he's dealt with this year. You don't give that up without a fight. And I would suspect San Antonio will fight to the bitter end to keep Kawhi in the fold.
Last one for Sekou Smith of NBA.com and NBA TV. In the past few years, it's been obvious, I think, from the regular season that we're going to see the matchup of the Cavs and the Warriors. This year, you can make the argument that one of those teams may not be there. Who's more likely not to make the final this year, the Cavs or the Warriors, if you had to pick one?
I can't believe I'm saying this because if you'd asked me this question at the start of the season, I would have laughed if somebody said the Warriors. But, Houston has been so good, and the fourth year of trying to do what the Warriors are doing the way they've done it, it becomes a very difficult proposition just because of all of the energy, emotionally and physically, you've exhausted to win 2 championships in 3 years. To go back for a fourth year of trying to play for a title, it's been done so rarely in sports in general, let alone in the NBA. It's just very difficult for me to see them getting by with all of the injury issues they've had to deal with this year. If they can get everybody healthy, and I think if all things are equal by the conference finals, they're going to be extremely difficult to deal with, whether it's Houston or anybody else. And if it's not Houston, you can forget everything I just said and go ahead and put the Warriors back in the finals. But Houston has a legitimate chance, Zach, of knocking them off. And I think we'd be naive if we didn't give Houston a puncher's chance to get through in the West this year. After what we've seen all season, we'd be really foolish to assume that the Warriors are just going to magically get there again because they're so talented.
Well, the big question is, does D'Antoni and Harden show up in the postseason? We'll have to see how that unfolds. Sekou Smith, though, I know he always shows up when he's on my show. I appreciate it. Thanks so much.
All right, Zach, I appreciate it.